All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Solo Musician Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Gates. Today, I got the chance to sit down with Brandon Valentine. Brandon Valentine is the executive director of the Central Pennsylvania Music Hall of Fame here in Central Pennsylvania. It's an organization that recognizes the local music community and holds an annual Central Pennsylvania Music Awards ceremony where they hand out awards to the people that they think are the best in the area. Brandon went into a lot of detail about what the organization is all about and what their vision is for the future, as well as just what it takes to win a Central Pennsylvania Music Award. All right, let's hop into the episode. So before we get started, I'm going to try not to tie up too much of your day because I know you're especially this time of year, I'm sure you're a very busy person.
I'll get it. I'm actually at a hotel at the moment.
Oh, okay. All right. Where you coming from?
I'm in Lancaster,
Okay.
and I just had the production meeting at the American Music Theater, so specking out stuff for the award show. And I was like, man, I got to find somewhere with the Wi-Fi here. So I left there quick, came across the street, and I'm sitting in some like banquet hall at the Wyndham over here. So
That's all right. I talked to Cabretti Bardol. I don't know if you know who he is. He's from Sink In and a couple other original bands in our area. I talked to him. He was in Kansas City last week. So he was just sitting in a Starbucks. And I'm like, all right, that'll work.
Yep. Yeah, as long as there's not too much background noise.
Oh, there towards the end there was like a kid screaming, and there's the steamed milk machine in the background. It was so loud, but that's okay. All right. So today, everybody, I'm sitting here with Brandon Valentine. He is the you're not the president anymore. What are you? You are.
That's right. I've promoted myself from president to executive director.
Okay. All right. All right. So he's the executive director of the Central Pennsylvania Music Hall of Fame. And that is a organization in our area that Brandon's going to tell you all about today. I could tell you everything that I know about it, but I don't know as much as he does. So I'm going to let him kind of explain what it is. So for Brandon, for people that are outside of our area, or even people that are in our area that haven't heard of you yet, which is not many, but there are some, can you tell them a little bit about who you are and what the Central Pennsylvania Music Hall of Fame is?
Sure thing. Yeah. First and foremost, thanks so much for having me, Dave. Doing some great work here with Solo Musicians Podcast, nominee for the CPMAs, which is part of our organization, which I'll dig into here. But yes, this is it's a 501c3 nonprofit organization that I founded back in 2019, and it is way bigger than myself now, with board of directors, advisory committee, and so forth. The mission statement for the nonprofit organization is to recognize, support, and grow our local music scene. So that takes many facets as far as meeting that mission statement, and it's really kind of a three-pronged approach, right? That's all focused on kind of our arbitrary borders of central Pennsylvania. So what I mean by arbitrary is, the people in the area where you and I are at, Dave, we consider the Harrisburg, York, Lancaster market kind of central Pennsylvania and the Susquehanna Valley, so to speak. But our organization deems central Pennsylvania basically vertical columns as far as the New York border and the Maryland border. And then as far west as, say, State College, Altoona, up into some state game lands, and as far east as the Lancaster, Reading, and it actually goes up into Scranton, Wilkes-Barre area. So basically everything outside of, say, Philadelphia, Allentown, and Pittsburgh and Erie. But that is the territory. And then that three-pronged approach that I reference is kind of past, present, and future. So with it being called the Hall of Fame, we like to recognize the best of all time from this area from the past. So those previous bands have been Poison, Fuel, Live, you name it, as far as, the big names that come from our area. With the present aspect of that three-prong approach, then that really comes into recognizing the current musicians currently in the local music scene. So that it, in turn, becomes our annual event from the Central Pennsylvania Music Awards and recognizing best rock band, best jazz band, best hip-hop artist, you name it. And then from the future aspect is really where we get the 501c3 status, which is our work on youth music education with the next generation of up and coming artists from this area, working with, I think we've had a couple preteens, I'd say, in there. Largely, it kind of gravitates towards ages 12 through 18 with different youth programs we do. So it is, while it is called the Hall of Fame, it is much more than that. And it all culminates in this big ceremony we have coming up, which is the 6th annual CPMAs, which is the Central Pennsylvania Music Awards, and a Hall of Fame induction ceremony coming up on March 5th.
Oh, very cool. I love it. That is a very thorough, and I think you've had to give this explanation a couple times. So
yeah, it's a little off the tip of the tongue,
that was very good. And just right off the top, I want to say thank you for the work that you do for the youth. I've been very vocal on this podcast. I've talked to a million people about my views on award ceremonies and those types of things. But what I think the real core of what you're doing is really, really helping the youth. And I think that if there's anybody who could really use all the benefits that can be afforded to them by having an organization like yours around, I think it's youth. I mean, there's so many things that they could be focusing on. And if you can nurture and kind of prop up that music seeking that a lot of these they're music students, a lot of them, and if you can just give positive reinforcement to that, I think that really shapes and grows the scene in ways that no award is ever going to grow the scene more than you guys giving the gift of positive reinforcement to youth musicians. So I really appreciate you guys doing that.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I mean, that's really spot on messaging. I mean, that's really the heart of the organization. And I think that kind of stems with motivation too, right? I mean, a lot of people just kind of look at it as, hey, it's an award show and that's it. But when we really dig into it, and it is in fact that core of the youth, motivating them with positive reinforcement, right? But then to show them that, hey, there is a scene in this area. You can grow as part of the family. There is camaraderie here. Your work can be, quality to be nominated for an award. And then also that motivation just kind of naturally moves up the ladder, right? From the kids to the award show. And then in the current scene, almost get a history lesson each and every award ceremony, which is like, here's a couple acts that were inducted in the Hall of Fame. You may recognize one or two of the big names, but you also get, this history of people who succeeded in the 60s or the 70s, or like we have some big band artists who have been, much before the doo-wop era in the 50s. So there's always some kind of educational standpoint, but again, then that's motivation, not only for the youth, but also those in the current scene to say, here's those who have reached the pinnacle, who have made it, so to speak, on multiple different levels to get inducted in the Hall of Fame. So that whole ladder from start to finish is really designed to build up the community. And like you said, number one, always will start with the next generation, even as they progress up the ladder.
Yeah, I love that message. One thing that you guys have done for me personally is with all of the nominees that you have every year, there's so many times, like when I was first getting into music, and it's not that long ago, right? So I just started playing in 2018 and I was nominated, I think, in 2021, which blew my mind. But whenever I first got into music, I saw all these people and I was like, I don't know who any of these people are whatsoever. And I remember thinking at the time a lot of like, I play, 200 shows a year. Why don't I recognize any of these names? And then I realized that a lot of those people, when you're playing all the time, or if you're, a cover musician and you're not really in the, regular originals category, you don't really cross paths with a lot of those people. So it's like, even JJ Rupp, like I've known JJ known of him for a long time. I used to live in Halifax. He's a local boy. And whenever I saw him nominated for country artist, I went, well, he's not country. And then I listened to his album and I was like, oh, he's country as hell.
Right.
So it's like, it's eye-opening to me because there's all of these acts that I either don't know about or I have some kind of other like preconceived notion of them. And then this gives me an opportunity to be like, oh, let me check them out. Let me see what they're about. And I love it because it makes me fall in love with more local music. And I mean, it's a great spotlight for all of the artists we have we have so many artists in this area. Like there's a ridiculous amount of talent here. So I love that part of the actual awards and of the organization itself. Now, you have a physical location of the Music Hall of Fame, and It's in Hummelstown, Pennsylvania. For anybody that's not from the area, that's right outside of Hershey Park. If you come to Hershey Park and you go there to the theme park, you can pop over to the Music Hall of Fame and check it out. Can you tell us a little bit of what like visitors can expect to see whenever they go there? I know it's like self-guided tours, correct?
Yeah, that's right. We call it kind of a free walkthrough museum. It is an extension of the property there, which is called the Farmhouse at the Englewood. It's a coffee shop, restaurant that they have there next to the Englewood, which is a large music venue as well. And then in the back is virtually the Central Pennsylvania Music Hall of Fame. There's several rooms back there with autograph stage used items, name it guitars or maybe even stage worn jackets are in there. Lots of autograph memorabilia by the biggest and best names in this area, who we either have inducted into the Hall of Fame or maybe is in consideration for the ballot in the future as well.
Very cool. Okay. All right. Any of your personal favorites of things that are in there? Any memorabilia that you're like, I love this part. Make sure you see this.
Yeah, I think I get that question a lot, and I think the most popular thing people want to see is the autograph items from Taylor Swift.
Okay.
From the Reading Why I'm Missing area. We have an autographed guitar that her people sent in. There's several CDs in there. I think one of the cool things is there's a CD in there before she made it. She performed at the I-105 Fall Fest, and there's a CD with her image on the actual disc. Right back in those days when you burned the disc and you printed the sticker label on the CD. Isn't even a jacket on the front, right? And I don't know, she might be 12, 13, 14 or something like that on the image. And I think it says like sponsored by one of the local banks. So
wow.
I really appreciate the items that are from the band when they were local before they made it big, really. Because I think those kind of show where they came from.
Yeah.
But I think the main spotlight of being there is actually a hall with all the plaques in it as well. So everybody who has been inducted, I think that's one of the key show points, because you get to see maybe some names that you didn't know came from this area, and maybe some names you never heard of, but you're still able to kind of read the synopsis of what they've accomplished. And there's a lot in there that is mind blowing and really eye-opening as far as some talent that you probably didn't know from Central Pennsylvania.
That's very cool. Yeah, just further shining the spotlight, and especially for the youth, right? Giving them hope. You're like, here's a hall of people who didn't have to turn wrenches for a living. They were able to make
Exactly.
noise.
Exactly. That's right.
That's awesome. Very cool. So can you tell us some of the current, like I would say like almost like programs or support that you provide to musicians in the area? Like do you have any programs? Are there any kind of outreach or anything like that you might have that you provide to local musicians?
Yeah, I think the focus has always been about the youth, right? So we do a youth music showcase, which is I hate using the term talent show because it doesn't do it justice, but it's a talent show on steroids, right? Of the best teens from the area to showcase their skills. And then from that actually is kind of where we, draft, so to speak, our Central Pennsylvania Youth All-Star Band, which we've done a couple of videos with as well. So a lot of resources dedicated to the youth. But when we think about it with the current music scene as well, the award show in and of itself is designed to recognize them and kind of build up the current scene as well. It's always our hope, there's always a means for argument out there. And I've even said it myself, with the Grammys and the Oscars and Emmys and all those kind of award shows are always subjective, right? We try to get it as right as we possibly can. But we hope it's also a marketing tool. And what I mean by that is, the people who are nominated or do win are able to use the badge on their social media. It's often, a first line on somebody's electronic press kit or resume that they send out to a venue to say, 4-time nominee, 2-time winner of the CPMAs. That is really the hope that we try to provide to the community and to the local artist, is a means to maybe get, even if it is $50 more out of a venue, right? To say like, I'm quality and I've been recognized, or maybe to get an opening slot on a national tour that you might not before, because you're able to say, hey, I won multiple CPMAs. We hope that to the venues and to the booking agents that it provides an extra bullet point on the resume to maybe, again, increase either the number of gigs, the quality of gigs, or maybe even the amount associated in terms of pay, whether you're a full-time musician or whether it's just a hobby. We really hope that allots it. But the further your question too, I mean, our social media is very devoted to sharing new releases, to trying to get everything out there. Dave, if you were to write some new music, I know it's been a while for you, but
Yeah.
I thought you released that one. At least I've seen on iTunes and listened to.
Sure.
But for example, if you just said, hey, I just released a new single. That's really all it takes. There's no bias when it comes to that. People reach out to us all the time and say, I released a new album, I released a new single. And it's just something that we share automatically on our social media to try to get them increased awareness, because we cover all genres, right? And we hope the intent is, my favorite thing really associated with everything that we get from the Hall of Fame is when someone says to me, I remember after the first ceremony, it was like, hey, I listened to Medusa's Disco. They're really good, right? They won the first album of the year.
Yeah.
And it was a friend of mine who doesn't know anything about the local music scene, has never listened to any artist on Spotify or iTunes. They follow what's popular already and that they can go see in a current music festival on a nationwide basis. But in that case, the award ceremony, the nominations, and or the winners inspired him to go seek out local musicians, listen to their stuff, and begin to follow them as a fan.
Gotcha. No, that's perfect. Yeah. I listened to quite a few artists off of there that I had never heard of before. Just from them being nominated. And to further your point with the badge, I find that a lot of bookers especially in our area, if they don't, I'm trying to figure out a way to put this that doesn't, if they don't, no, I'm just going to say it. I'll qualify it though.
Yeah, go for it. Absolutely.
If they don't know anything about music, there's a lot of bookers in our area that don't know, that they're like, they don't know who the acts are. They don't, especially if they're just thrown into that position. I find a lot of those bookers, they're like, if you have a CPMA nomination or a CPMA win, they are like, we're going to give you a chance. Like, you don't even have to. You'll go above and beyond. You kind of cut to the front of the line. And I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing. It's just something that I've noticed from the area.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see the argument on both areas. If you haven't been a nomination, it's almost like a exclusion kind of thing. So, I mean, just to kind of go along on that same page, awareness of artists is something that we focus on an annual basis too. I mean, we have a database of like, I don't even know, I think there's over 1,000 because, we talk about it as far as like Harrisburg, York, Lancaster. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of great acts in there. But then when you include areas, that are outside of the traditional scope, maybe for you and I to drive to see to a show, and you talk about, Altoona or, Scranton or Wilkes-Barre or Williamsport or these kind of areas, they all have their own scene and they all have the top cream of the crop out there as well. So in some cases, if it's a local venue and they're looking to book somebody who lives in the Lancaster, York area, let's say, they might not be familiar with someone who's, lives in Honesdale up in the Poconos, right?
Right.
So the territory is huge in that respect, but that is, good. And I can see both sides of that. I like I always tend to focus on the positive. So
sure.
I really like hearing that message with, some venues have just kind of gone to our, website as far as nominations and winners goes, and they virtually use it as a database to reach out to artists.
Right.
So I like that it's kind of a pre-qualifier for them. There's been times in the past where I'm also a local musician myself, where you reach out to a venue to try to book a gig, right? And they'll say, well, why don't you come out to an open mic first and kind of prove yourself, and we'll see if, we like your talent or if your style fits us. Whereas I think now our website almost is that pre-qualifier. They can say, okay, here's what genre are they in, and maybe they have a nominee or a winner badge, and it almost, like you said, kind of moves it beyond that unnecessary step in some cases, where the artist is talented and that they would fit the vibe there. So it's,
that's a
great, all positives all around, man.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it too. I like it. So whenever it comes to the actual Hall of Fame, not so much the CPMAs, but the Hall of Fame, the Hall of Fame committee, how do they select acts to be considered for that annual Hall of Fame ballot? How does that process kind of go down in the background?
Yeah, it's kind of a year-long process, similar to the CPMAs. There's committees on both both ends. And the Hall of Fame Selection Committee, both cases, they always ask to remain anonymous because sometimes they'll get hassled as far as anybody reaching out either way, which is, hey, how do I get on here? But we have formalized consideration forms on our website is really where it starts. John Christopher is the chair of the Hall of Fame Selection Committee, and he always says, no consideration without a nomination, right? So even if it's kind of a word of a mouth thing, like you're like, hey, check this person out. It's like we need to have that formalized structure for Hall of Fame consideration, which takes a look at everything in the past, to accomplishments, to tenure, and all those things are considered. There are over 100 acts on the consideration list for potential induction.
Wow.
And we've already inducted 35 at this point over the past 5 years. So that's 6 a year. No, it's 30. I'm sorry. 30 is what we have inducted, and then there's 6 on the ballot this year, so it'll be 36. So even with knowing that, there are multiple Grammy nominees and Grammy winners who still haven't been selected to that. But that's kind of where it starts, right? Nomination, consideration. We have year-round meetings where we kind of meet and actually like deliberate. We'll, go around the table and speak up for, this artist for X reasons. And here's why I think they should, get votes. And on top of that, Hall of Fame Selection Committee, we always do at-large voters out in the scene as well. So each year we pick different voters who can come in and provide their perspective, because we don't want to make it, a good old boys club, so to speak, and have everything, one-sided and everybody feels the same way every year. We try to mix it in there to maintain as much integrity and fairness as possible, and allow people from the outside who are currently in the scene as well to offer their opinion. That maybe, there's a genre or a time period that they know more about and they're able to enlighten. But we have a whole entire database that happens behind the scenes, and the people who are voting have access to that database. And there's a list of links on each of the bands or artists who are potential for induction. And they review those things, for months. And at some point, we finally get together and we cast our vote. It is a tiered system, I should say, numbering wise. So your top vote getter gets 10 points, then 9 points, then 8 points, and 7 points. It goes the whole way down to 1. You can vote for a maximum of 10. You can vote for 1. You can vote for none. So it's kind of completely up to the voter. And then all of those get put into the system. They actually get validated by one. They have to go through 2 or 3 multiple validations from different people to make sure that there's no, foul play there and everything's fair. And that's how we end up spitting it out at the end of the year. And that's what dictates our annual induction ceremony. And this year we got 6 of the top artists getting ready to induct here on March 5th.
That is a very good explanation. I like I said, my intention with this podcast today is to kind of just let everybody know how this works, because I'm sure that it's been talked about on other podcasts or wherever, but just to have a good snapshot of just how it works behind the scenes, because we all see what happens at the CPMAs. We kind of see the final product. We see the youth showcases. We don't really know how the ballot process works sometimes. So I appreciate you shedding some light on that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, transparency is important, I think, especially when it comes to, voting processes, for sure. Because,
sure.
You want it to maintain as much integrity as possible. And that's what we're about, for sure.
I get that. So in your board and advisory committee, you have all types of people. You have like radio DJs, musicians, venue owners, businessmen, talent buyers. They're all industry personnel. Right. What do you look for whenever you're considering adding people to the organization? What is, do you have any qualifiers that you're like, all right, this is something we need, or is it just a specific need that's being met at the time, or?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think diversity is very important when it comes to that. People from different age groups, different walks of life, different vocations. But really at its core, everything either stems from being involved in the music scene or having a love of music. So everybody in there, and we've cycled through a lot, to be honest. When we started, the goal was to have, as many recognizable names and faces affiliated with the organization to gain trust right out of the gate. Nobody wanted it to be, 1, 2, 3 people, and that's how it works. It doesn't ring true. The argument also comes up as like, fan vote versus, industry informed vote. So the more the merrier almost when it comes to the board and the advisory committee, because we get all those varying opinions of people who are involved in the scene. So our 40 plus person, board and advisory committee allows for that when the voting process takes place. But yeah, I think, you almost answered the question, which is different walks of life, a lot of diversity when it comes in there. There isn't really, an interview per se, or, you must meet these certain qualifications. When it started, it was a lot of people who I've had relationships with and have already trusted myself personally, either as being a musician or being in the local music scene. Chachi and Jenna, for example, I was in Mountain Road, still am. Mountain Road is like kind of a classic rock country band. We used to go in on Nash FM, and that's kind of how I knew Chachi and Jenna, because they were the radio DJs in there. We would play live on the air, once or twice a year. And I remember when, I was kind of throwing around the idea of starting the Hall of Fame, there were certain people that I kind of reached out to, with them being one of the first to say, what do you think of this idea? And, would you support it? And would you be the host? And they were the hosts first year, and Jenna's been a host every year. So a level of trust on the board and the advisory committee was paramount, that level of diversity. And it still continues to change and grow with new additions and subtractions almost on an annual basis.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, it seems like you get a collective opinion. It's definitely, there's just the music shop owners have a different view of the scene than the radio DJs and the venue owners. So it's definitely a diverse crowd. I just wondered how much thought was behind that. Now I'd imagine a bunch. So, so whenever it comes to the Music Hall of Fame, what is something that you're like personally very proud of when it comes to the actual organization itself?
Again, I mean, stemming at the core is the youth stuff. And I think one of the things, if you ask, where would you point, is our involvement with the Central Pennsylvania Youth All-Star Band that we put together and the videos that we produced. That is a no-brainer as far as time and energy goes. That is hands down my favorite aspect of doing it, is selecting the right kids for the project, for instruments, for vocals, for the right parts, working with them in the studio, even before that, in rehearsals and practice space, to better their skills. Their parents always have 1,000 questions as, how do I get a gig, or how do I, get merch made? So that kind of involvement to take, a teenager and get them their first gig, or have them in a music video like we did with Baba O'Reilly. Was the first one that we did with the Youth All-Star Band. And for your listeners out there, if you haven't seen it, you can find it on YouTube. You can look up Central Pennsylvania Youth All-Star Band's version of Baba O'Reilly. And it got, a lot of plays on YouTube. And we were actually able to get recognition from Roger Daltrey and Pete Townsend. Both Pete Townsend shared it on his Facebook page. And then Roger Daltrey kind of sent us a reaction video. So that has resulted in it kind of going viral on TikTok with a bunch of views, and sharing the YouTube video as well. So seeing the success out of the Youth All-Star Band and seeing those kids, how surprised they were to have Roger Daltrey reach out. I mean, he's a rock god, he might as well be Paul McCartney. It's amazing.
Yeah.
To get the biggest names in the music scene locally, and now even, abroad, recognize what's going on here in Central Pennsylvania, both at the current level as well as, with the teenagers that we work with. That's hands down the most rewarding thing for me, for sure. What I'm most proud of.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I mean, that's the production on that video and all of the different people that were in it. I mean, it was so good. It was so good. And I've probably watched it, 40 times, something like that. I've showed it to a million people. Like it's great. Plus, like all of Alex and Faith and everybody that's in there, and Addie, like they're all just such great musicians, and they really, that's an awesome thing to be proud of. And now for the CPMA, for the Music Hall of Fame itself, is there anything that you feel that could be could be improved upon? Is there anything that your goals are to improve this area of it? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, that is my favorite question to ask as soon as the award ceremony is over. My board and advisory committee would probably laugh at that because literally, there's always so much positive that comes out of it. But my question is always, what could we improve? What could we do better? How can we do things better? And there are things, even while the ceremony is going on or even throughout the year, I'm like, man, this could have been a lot better. Like, for example, the pre-show, right, stands out to me. It's a good thing and a bad thing, right? And the sense of with the number of awards continuing to grow is great. It means more recognition, more nominees, further building the scene. The problem with that is how do we prevent the award ceremony from not being a 4 or 5 hour ceremony?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So timing really comes into play. How do you keep everyone's attention? We've toyed with, do we do an intermission? But then sometimes, you get maybe the people who are nominated in the first half leave. We've done 2 different ceremonies in the past. One year we had the CPMAs, and then we had what we called the core awards, which encompass kind of the businesses and the kids. So we've tried all different things and how to perfect it. And that's probably the area that I focus on the most because I get, heck, even yourself, right? You're nominated for male cover artist, right? Like,
yeah.
We had that last year, and we have it this year designated as part of the pre-show. And, I like the comparison as far as, with the major award ceremonies, there's always awards that happen before the show starts. But then it almost begs that question, how do you decide what goes beforehand? Those people feel slighted because they're not part of the main show. So our goal is constantly, how can we put everything together? How can we be as fair as possible? How can we maximize everybody's experience? And last year we had it kind of worked out, and then we got so many interviews, and then it just ended up being like a rush of like, all right, the winner for this is, the winner for that is, the winner for this is. And as soon as while it was happening, I was like, man, we didn't do this justice. Like this isn't. So as far as this year goes, the edit, I guess, we made to that is the pre-show will look and feel much more like the actual show, with slides, with the nominees on it, with the opportunity to come up on stage and say some words. So that way everybody kind of has an equal share there. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, I would throw it out to yourself and your listeners. Always open for opportunities for improvement. Like I said, that it's almost crazy that's my reaction as far as like, what went wrong? What can we improve? But I love hearing that stuff because the goal is to strive for perfection, but also simultaneously know it's impossible, right?
Yeah.
There's always something that is going to need tweaked, but we try to make it as best as we can. So
sure.
Ears are always open from myself, from the board, from the advisory committee on any recommended changes, any recommended tweaks, anything add, anything subtracted. We're always willing to listen because we want it to be as best as it can and to do it justice for everybody.
Sure. That's the best way to grow, right? That's the best way to adapt. That's the best way to earn the, respect or the love of the local music scene, is to be open to, maybe if you're figuring it out. And I love the fact that you're this younger organization. I know you're going into your 6th year, right? So as a younger organization, like every year I see something else changing. There's something else growing. There's something else that's different. It's not a stagnant organization. And that is directly the result of being like, what did we get wrong? If you just walk around patting yourself on the back all year, it's not going to help at all.
100%. And that could even be applied to musicians as well, which is, we talk about motivation, we talk about, like, we hope the awards is, all right, I'm going to go for it this year, putting out an album, like this is my year kind of thing. We hope that feels like that. So that same sentiment, I hope, is applied to the bands as well, which is, don't stay stagnant.
Right.
Keep driving,
That's a great point. Yeah. There's a couple different, methods of thought when it comes to musicians and how they function. And you've hit it on it in a different podcast where you said, some musicians are out there to be creative and have creative expression, and that's the only thing that really matters to them. And then other ones are like, I can do this. I got really good at doing this. I'd like to have acknowledgement and recognition for doing this. And this, the CPMAs really serve that part, where I feel like the CPM, the Hall of Fame itself and the youth programs really nurture both parts. So
Yep.
I like the tie-in between the two of them there. So I want to get into some questions about the CPMAs, and I can almost guarantee you probably haven't gotten a lot of these questions on other podcasts.
Let's do it, man.
And these are going to be very good. I think these are going to be very good for everyone. So first of all, what's the overall goal with the CPMA event? Is it networking for musicians? Is it the recognition? What is your, if you had to say, this is my overall, this is exactly what I want this to be about, what would you say that might be?
Yeah, I think you touched on it earlier. Both of us have really throughout, which is, I think those are both the things that I would go towards, right? Recognition is one. And again, it's how does it support the mission statement, which is recognize, support, and grow. And the award ceremony really works towards all three of those. So really recognizing, I'd say recognition and camaraderie, I'd say probably are the main two things, which could also be phrased as networking. Like you said, both of us are musicians. If we have a gig, I know you got gigs 7 days a week. I'm more on the hobby end, right? I'll play a Friday or Saturday randomly here or there, but it's tough for us to go see other local artists, right?
Yeah.
For people in the music scene as artists or bands who are gigging every week, and Thursday, Friday, Saturday might be the top requests or the top days you have booked. And if everybody's playing on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, you can't go see your friends, or you can't go see bands you're interested in, or you can't go see, other nominees or other winners or someone that you just want to check out. And that opportunity there is, I kind of imagine it similar to like the Grammys or the Oscars, right? Which is, in my mind, everybody who comes to the awards ceremony is like a local celebrity, right? I mean, I know. You and I really haven't had a conversation, but I know you.
Right. Same. Yeah.
I mean, it's the same with all the artists, maybe have never had a conversation with, fill in the blank. I don't even know. Jess Zimmerman, Hunter Root, whoever it is. Right. But when you see them, you know who they are because you're following them on social media, and they might feel the same way about you, where they're like, oh, that's Dave Gates. You never had a conversation, but they know who you are.
Right.
So when you get all those personalities in the same room and you're able to have, conversations, during the red carpet before the ceremony starts, or, hey, I really like your music, just kind of or congrats on the nomination, I'm sure you're going to win tonight, like all those kind of vibes. It's really rewarding to see. It's one of my favorite stories. I remember the first year was at the Whitaker Center, right? And housed about 700 seats in there. And it sold out in 3 weeks from tickets going on sales. And I was like, man, this is crazy. No one knew what to expect. No one knew if it was going to be a total joke or something legit that it would even last for 5 or 6 years. And, I'm a natural procrastinator myself. So I think I was actually backstage still writing out, and the winner goes to cards. Right?
Oh, wow.
That's how organized things were for that. I was sitting on the stage doing it, and there were security ushers and stuff, and they were on their radio going like, okay, it's 5:59 or whatever time it was, like we're 1 minute away from doors open, and just having that moment of like, well, here we go. We're going to see what this is like. Finishing up all that stuff, and then I walked out into the lobby area and saw everybody dressed to the nines, getting their picture in front of the photo backdrop, and I was like, this is it, man. They get it,
Yeah.
Makes sense. The scene kind of surrounded around itself almost, in a sense of like, yeah, we do deserve a night to celebrate ourselves, to celebrate our accomplishments throughout the calendar year. If somebody says, hey, you did a good job, I want to be there. I want to, not only for myself, but my favorite part is just the familial sense of the community coming together, where bands share other band stuff. They say, congratulations to this person, congratulations to that person. Here's my favorites, but go listen to all their music. So-and-so had a really great year. Here's my favorite album of the year. all that kind of support from other artists, I hope, I don't know, I've heard people say it. I think that it's kind of changing the music scene's vibe to more positive and familial. I don't want to stake a claim on that broadly, but I mean, I've been involved in the scene for, I don't know, a couple decades, I guess now at this point. And, at times there was a sense of like competition and negativity somewhat in my own personal experience. And I feel like in my own personal experience, maybe that recognition kind of supports everybody to support each other, right? I always compare it to like the craft beer industry, right? If I own a craft brewery and you own a craft brewery and we're across the street from each other, we're not in competition, right? We can attract the same customer basically. They can come and have a beer from my place, and then I can say, yeah, go try across the street. They came out with something new, and that's what happens with like beer crawls or beer trails or whatever it is. A craft beer fan will jump from bar to bar to try the best stuff, similar to like a wine tour, right?
Right.
And the same kind of vibe can happen with local music, which is, start somewhere and, continue in the genre, find what fits for you because everybody likes everything different.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. I would say that I see exactly what you're seeing in a lot of ways. I see the local music scene coming together. I see a lot more unity. I see a lot less. Here's what I see the most is I see people being judged by who they are now and not what they do. So it's not like, it's not a musician. If a lot of people don't like this musician, it's probably because his personality's not that awesome or her personality's not that. It has nothing to do with them being a musician anymore. Where before it was like, I even when I started, it was I couldn't get in some venues at all if like this specific musician was booking there because they're like that that mentality of no. If I let him in here, then I'm gonna have to let somebody else in. Then I'm gonna have to, no, and I don't feel that anymore. At least not at most of the places I play. It's like there's so much work for everybody. Just come in and play.
That's a great point. Because then it removes that like clicky sense, right? Where it's like you feel like these dozen artists are the only ones who get to play there on that stage or whatever. Now it's kind of like there's a humongous scene here, and let's open up the floodgates.
Right. Absolutely. All right. So you're what's the I don't know if you've ever been asked this before. If you have, I haven't heard the answer yet, so I'm excited. What's the craziest thing that's happened backstage at the CPMA so far? Has there been anything that sticks out to you like this was something wild?
My first thought probably would have been that writing up the and the winner goes to kind of last minute kind of things.
Right.
I think my role backstage kind of juggles throughout the ceremony to handing people the award, the presenters, and making sure it kind of flows smoothly. There's two things that come to mind really. One is I actually missed my cue to walk out to the podium last year.
Oh.
Because I was talking to the now CEO of Members First backstage about being a sponsor.
That's an important conversation.
Yeah, he was back there presenting, and I was like, "This is really important. Like, let's hammer this down." Now, I mean, it probably ended up looking seamless. It may have been a 5 or 10 second delay, but it's just funny that that was happening while we were kind of in the zone, focused on the ceremony.
Right.
One of the other things that comes to mind is every year, like every ceremony, there are people who come up and throw the award to the sky and say thanks and walk off. And then there's the flip side of that coin, which is, I want to read a novel up here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to consume the entire time.
Right.
Even if the, play out music gets hit.
Yeah.
And there was one instance in particular where a band that we inducted in the Hall of Fame a couple of years ago was taking, I think at this point it was probably like 11 or 12 minutes in their acceptance speech. And we reach out to everybody, and we usually say you have about 2 to 3 minutes because we like to keep the ceremony going. We want to give you your time, but we also want to be respectful to everybody else, that no one feels that they have to hurry. So yeah, the drama backstage was, do you want us to play them off? Should we turn off their microphones, and see them off stage? And it was a tough situation because ultimately in that moment I was like, listen, these guys, they put their time in. They're here for this moment. Their family flew in from all around the country. They're embracing it, and ultimately, it was like let them do their thing. And I know the audience feels that sometimes too, where you can just tell someone's dragging on.
Yeah.
But you want to be supportive, be like, I get it, you're having your moment, kind of thing.
I was there for that band. I was there for
Yeah.
that band, and
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh my God. Yeah. It was I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I think it's been 15 minutes. I was saying to the people beside me, I'm like, they're thanking everyone. He's like, I want to thank the janitor. I want to thank my school teacher from second grade. I'm like,
That's right.
All right, they're not all here. Let's wrap it up, man. We love you. We love you. We would love you even more if this was 5 minutes shorter.
Correct.
Yeah.
You got it.
I love it. That's funny. I was thinking like on stage moments. I remember Derrick Henry winning something. I think it was for Observe, and Rachel Rock's just busting through the curtain and out there taking a selfie.
Yep. Yep. And there was a moment. I think Derrick Henry won Best Vocalist that year, and I think he went to the bathroom or something, and Dylan, his drummer, went up as him and gave an acceptance speech.
Oh, that's right.
That was interesting too.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, those are fun. Those are fun little things, man.
Sure.
So I'm going to get into some questions here that are kind of a blend between mine, and I had some listeners submit questions and to run these past you, and I think some of them are really, really good, and a good point for us to get some clarity on the CPMAs. So you kind of hinted to this earlier, but with music kind of being like a really subjective art, right? Where each individual person kind of connects or dislikes music just based off of however they feel. Yep. How do you navigate the challenge of like trying to be considered somewhat of like an authority on what is the best of the area? Like how do you deal with that weight and that responsibility? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? Because I think the first thing that comes to mind is removing a bias as well. So one of the things we kind of have in place is people on the board and the advisory committee are not allowed to vote for someone that they have an affiliation with or are part of. So for example, I'm in a couple bands, right? I can't vote for myself or, like a family member or somebody that I'm close with. So like those kind of stipulations always come into there as well, just kind of as a safeguard. But yeah, it's a great question, right? Because I mean, like anything that's subjective, which is art totally is, can come with that almost as a caveat, right? Which is, what authority is anybody on the board of the advisory committee to say what is good or better than someone else? But that is almost the understoodness of an award show as well. Which is, the Oscars every year. There's 10 nominees for Best Picture. I like one, you like another one, and ultimately one comes out of left field and wins. When you create an award show, that kind of comes with the territory. But you try your very best to make it as objective as possible, which is very hard when it comes to art. But we put in certain metrics and certain qualifiers for everybody to consider, and plenty of time for everybody to do their research as well. Someone asked me, I think it was like a week or two ago, if I knew a certain band and they were like popular in like the 90s or the 2000s. And I was like, I don't even remember what the band was. But I was like, no, I never heard of that before. And they were like, really? Like, what, do you live under a rock? And my answer was, no, but I can tell you anything about the local music scene.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because I know more local bands and about releases than I do probably mainstream music at this point. That is what I listen to. That is what I focus on. Because it's the nature of the beast. It's what we're in. So
sure.
When we think about trying to make it objective, and also transparent with the artists themselves, is like here is what we look for when it comes to consideration for the CPMAs. Just like it is with the Hall of Fame, there are certain metrics like tenure and all that kind of stuff. Always number one comes back to quality in general. And then when we start looking at number 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe up to 10, the things that are considered, a lot of that is already on the consideration for nomination form that we have at the end of each calendar year. So if you're an artist out there just learning about the CPMAs and you're like, how do I get a nomination or whatever? It's always at the end of each calendar year, usually in the October, November, December timeframe, where you can personally yourself kind of submit your annual resume for consideration. And then this whole committee kind of reviews all of them. And there's been thousands every year that we have to sift through. But it's also an ongoing process before that, right? So, for example, let's say you are coming out with an album on March 5th, right? And we know that, which is the CPMA's days. If we see and hear about that and share it, that kind of goes into a database too of like, okay, here's kind of what we're seeing throughout the year. So that way it doesn't really end up being super overwhelming at the end of the year. We kind of already have our pulse on some of the things, at least that we've seen coming up. But again, quality, number one, releases is kind of number two, and quality of releases, quantity of releases. Did they release a single? Did they do a music video? Did they release an album? Did they release an EP? And then it kind of moves from there as far as kind of growth throughout the year, which can kind of be deemed as, number of shows, quality of shows, opening for national acts, doing some kind of tour, growth of social media. There's a couple of bands over the past couple of years who have, exploded on TikTok, and has really catapulted them on a regional, if not a national level as well. So yeah, all of those things kind of go into the metrics for consideration. And then, like I said, there's a couple safeguards in there as well. We have some, like I said, talent buyers. So it's like if you're, booking artists or managing them, like you can't vote for them, or if you're directly related with them, which is tough. I mean, like even myself, like I have a lot of relationships with people in the music scene. I know, a lot of the nominees, but you have to approach it completely as objectively as you can. To not play favorites, it's not like I said earlier, it's not like a good old boys thing, or it's not meant to be a clique. It's meant to be as objective and as full of integrity as possible. And I think that's kind of spoken and proof in the number of different nominees and the different winners that we've had over the years. I think we just did a recent calculation, and last year there was over 550 different nominees from Central Pennsylvania for CPMAs, and I think there was over 90 this year as well. So, over 600 and some different nominees in 6 years just shows the breadth of our scene and everything that really goes into consideration with that. So, somebody doesn't release an album this year or doesn't do much, maybe they had an off year, but there still could be, one of the biggest names in the scene that year worthy of a nomination.
Right. I got you.
If it came down to fan vote, Shea Quinn would probably win every award he was nominated for.
The
guy's popular. He's got a great group of followers. But when you look at it then, and you look in those qualifications, like what happened in the calendar year, then that's kind of how we analyze it.
Okay, I like that. That's a great breakdown. I'm gonna dissect what you said just a little bit. So,
sounds good.
So for this year, you have 326 nominated acts, or venues, or just nominees in general. So there's 326 nominees across the awards for this year.
That's a huge number, Dave.
That is a gigantic. I hand counted them this morning to find out how many you had.
I was going to say, good on you, buddy. That's awesome. I was going to say, I hope you copied and pasted that into Excel and looked at the number on the left.
I wish. I was like 1, 2. So one of my questions really is back to, you said that, hopefully the board and the advisory committee have enough time to do research and make an educated opinion on the acts. But there's 49 days between the announcement of who's nominated to the actual awards. And you got to have time to make the awards in between there and everything else. So how is it even possible for them to make an educated opinion and not go off of like name recognition with that many acts to consider? I mean, that's, even if you have 30 days, what is that? That's 12 acts a day they gotta take a look at.
100%. Yeah. I mean, if one of the requirements of being on the advisory committee of the board is that you don't sleep during the months.
I like that answer.
Yeah, no, I completely get it, and that's why it's almost seen as like an never ending kind of thing. My son plays travel baseball, and everyone's like, "Oh, the season's over." Nope, it just moves to indoor tryouts. It's an annual thing, and that's kind of the metric with this too is having your pulse. What's the word? I don't know,
Yeah, like your
ear to
finger
the
on the
ground, I
pulse.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, finger on the pulse, ear to the ground. One of those things every day of the year, right? So when we see, for example, Big Sky Quartet just released their EP this past Friday, or their album, I should say, at Appalachian Brewing Company, right? So we see things like that. Somebody just released a single, somebody released an album, like that kind of goes into our database, and it's encouraged to kind of pay attention throughout the year. It's a very similar process when it comes to the Oscars, which is all of those voters are viewing the cinema throughout the year, and then at the end of the year, there's a for your consideration process, which is more of a formal application process. But no, you're 100% right. If it was just a cram in the last couple weeks, I mean, if you do the math, that would literally have me on my phone here going to iTunes and going like 30-second clips of everybody. Like, do I like it? Do I not like it?
Right.
Which isn't that, expansive. So, everybody kind of has the same instruction, right? Which is to, eat, sleep, and breathe the local music scene, have their ear to the ground, finger on the pulse, what have it, so that they kind of come into the process informed. And then every time, myself included, like you said, there are bands I'm like, oh, I've never heard of this band, right? Like they must be new. No, they're not new. We're finally aware of them, and maybe they're from our backyard, maybe they're from State College. I don't know. But then those kind of things take a little bit more digging into. At least that's how I approach it. Is I feel like I have a general idea when I come into it, and then I'm like, all right, let me dig a little bit deeper on the stuff that I'm unaware of, and then kind of compare that against it in terms of my voting. But I think a lot of it kind of comes into the quality of the recording too. For me, you can click on someone and listen to it and be like, man, this is really professional. If it kind of meets that ear test of like, man, this is radio ready. This band could be ready for world domination. Um, Now I think that always kind of like helps move it up a level.
Sure, sure. That makes sense. I was just kind of wondering because I know like for bands that release original music or really just anybody, but like whenever it comes to tribute bands or it comes to
Yeah.
cover acts or it comes to
Yeah.
music shops, it just seems to me I'm like, how do they have any time to check out these people to actually see who
Yeah.
they are unless they
No, you're
come
right.
out to a show and then
Yeah.
most of those people and this is just my I guess experience is
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever seen anybody from the advisory committee at any one of my shows, and I've played a million shows, and
Yeah,
it's
that's 100% fair. Yeah.
and I know they're busy people, like
Yeah.
and Chachi's not coming to my show, I mean, Jenna Clay's not going to come out to a solo show at some bar in the middle of nowhere, but
Yes.
it's like then that as a member of the music scene, I'm just like, okay,
Yeah.
so how do they keep their finger on the pulse if they're not
Yeah.
out in the scene, if they're not out
Yeah.
experiencing the music?
Yes, that was expressed to us probably within the past year or two as well, and that's something that we're kind of continually working to improve on, which is as we're calling it like the street team,
Mhm.
which is making a database, having people go out there. It happens here and there, but you're right. That is probably the hardest metric, which is how does someone sound live, maybe compared to their studio recording, kind of comes into place as well.
Hmm.
Um, heck, there's been I get accusations all the time, right? Especially
I'm
when
sure.
nominations come out. It's like 99% positive, like, man, this is great, this is awesome, like I can't wait, this is gonna be good. And then there's always like, how did so and so get nominated? How did you not see this person or whatever like that? Here's a video of this guy or girl performing live. Like, do you think this is the best kind of thing in there? So like, there's some people trying to spit venom out there as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Some of them might be accurate, but not all of them.
Right.
But yeah, always open for transparency. So,
Sure.
but yeah, I totally agree with that. As far as cover bands, solo musicians like yourself, is you can go off so much. You can go off social media content, videos, audio recordings, be it on Spotify and that kind of thing. You can go off social media growth. You can go off looking at a schedule. But the ultimate decider in terms of quality, in my mind, should be not only the product that they release, but the product that they put out live on stage each and every night. And like I said, that we actually have a committee that is designated called the street team that we're looking, to kind of get more out there and possibly capture live videos, live audio, have a street team as far as membership goes to gain access to venues. So it's doesn't need to be a burden to them financially if they're able to get out and about each and every night. So yeah, that's something that we're looking to grow upon, because I can't get out and see every local artist ever.
Right. Well. No,
but no, it's a fair question, and I like it, and it's something we're working on for sure.
That is a great idea. A street team, people to go out and exactly what you said, put their finger on the pulse of the local music scene, because I mean that you're going to have acts that probably should have been included in a category that you just don't know about because they don't have a social media following. Like that's that's probably like I had one of those questions come in. Somebody submitted like on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is social media presence for being considered for an award? And I mean, I'm gonna have you answer it, but I think it's very important that you're online, because if you're not, how the hell is anybody going to know who you are?
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, I think my head would go to like right in the middle. Like, if it was one of those like very important, slightly important, I'd be Switzerland here. But I think the realistic answer to that is it is very important, right? Because you're trying to sell yourself, you're trying to market yourself. And if, I'm a solo musician, playing guitar in my bedroom and recording videos, not on an actual professional page or not sharing anything, how do you expect to be discovered? Right? How do you expect to be, gain fans? So it is almost a necessary evil, I think, in that sense. You'd like to know everybody out there, but unless you kind of have that presence online and you're able to be shared and marketable, it's got to be eye-opening to everybody, including the fans.
Sure.
But I wouldn't say it's a disqualifier. I think we've had several, at least a couple off the top of my head that I can think of that I think have zero social media presence, but that we've either seen online or heard, in digital distribution.
Sure. And having a social media presence can be an addition. Like if you don't have a social media presence, you probably have to be an outlier in terms of quality and what you're putting out.
You'd think so, because you're not really trying to push and market it.
Right.
I mean, like we were saying earlier, there are people who they just want to be creative. They don't care what people think of their music. They want to express it. And that is the gift that music gives back to them. So there are people out there like that are just like, you know what, if fans find me, cool. I'm not trying to, become the next big thing and go worldwide. I want to express myself and put it out there. Makes it harder for us to dig and find that kind of stuff. But that's okay. I think social media is probably one of the lower qualifiers as far as, bonus points, or maybe even like a cherry on top of the sundae kind of thing, unless you like completely blow up on social media, right? I mean, like, I think last year at least, Hunter Root kind of exploded on TikTok. Burn the Jukebox had like 1 million followers or something. So like those kind of things were like, eye-opening, that maybe kind of elevated them maybe a bit on top of already, the quality stuff that they put out. But I can't think of any instance where it was like, someone's social media was like, the be all end all if they won an award or not.
I think what would I at least in my interpretation of it, I think that what would be the benefit of having a bigger social media presence is having more content for them to look at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you're posting videos, or if you're I'm here and they see an active schedule of you playing, like they're able to see shows, like that's probably more beneficial than just having, like, if you have social media, you don't do anything with it. It's not very helpful. Doesn't matter if you have 100,000 followers. If you never post anything, 100%.
It's 100%.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, in that way, like, we started this in 2019, and the first ceremony was in January of 2020. And then, actually, I think it was January. Yeah. So then within like 6 weeks, COVID happened.
Right.
And that almost kind of gave us somewhat as a gift, because the live stream world just opened up immensely. Yeah. And then that gave us more content to review as far as live performances goes. And some people, yourself, you still go live, and, there's a lot of solo artists or bands that still do live streams out there. Not the be all end all, but like you said, it's more content, which means more informed decision.
You got it. You got it. All right, awesome. So you said you receive like thousands of submissions every year for consideration. And I mean, I'm sure that there's thousands or tens of thousands of fan votes that come in that fan voting period. Do you think it would help or hurt public opinion if you published any of those numbers? Do you think it would help if people were like, this person got 10,000 fan votes and this person got, 100 fan votes? And the second part of that question, how much does the fan vote actually make a difference in the judges or the advisory committee whenever they're picking who the award winners are?
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective, right? We just had somebody ask that, I think, on social media. They were like, do we know how many votes we got? It's not something we posted in the past, and kind of like our answer, we kind of ruminated over it and like, what's the best way to think about this is similar to, we are not a big award ceremony, right? We're not the Grammys,
sure,
the Oscars, but at least it's some kind of precedent to model after. And it's kind of the same thing as far as, you get a winner for best male supporting actor, let's say. Nobody knows who came in second place, third place, 10th place, whatever it is.
Right.
It's deemed as the winner, and that's it, right? And I don't know. It's an interesting way to think about it in that case, which is, will it help or hurt? Because in some cases, like, we can't put the fan vote as the be-all, end-all. And what I mean by that is there are some people who go gung-ho on social media, who share the heck out of it and say, vote for me, vote for me, vote for me, vote for me. And there are some people who might not even know they're nominated at that point, right? When the fan voting comes out, or just say, it's not me. I don't want to kind of go into that like salesy kind of thing and ask for people to do anything. I'm just going to sit back, and if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And then in that case, if it is solely the fan vote, then we're almost rewarding the people who push, right? And in some cases, we're fully conscious. We get every year accusations as well of like, somebody said you can vote multiple times a day, or if you cancel out Facebook, you can reload it and then it'll allow you to do it again. There's all kinds of services out there. You can pay for bot voting as well. So we have in our voting system, there's additional security measures that we put into place on that to make sure that it comes from unique IP addresses, and it actually has locations where it's at too. So for example, one of the first years I remember, there was one act that at the end of the voting actually had thousands and thousands of votes, and you can see on there that it came from Pakistan.
Oh, right. Big local act.
So yeah, I mean, they had a lot of support from the Pakistani community.
Wow.
But I mean, I think what that spoke to is, there are services out there that you can say, give me 10,000 votes for $100 or whatever it is. And that's not what we're trying to accomplish, right? I don't want to put pressure on people to try to lobby for votes out there and think that that is what it is. And ultimately, if you look at it in that sense, like, for example, let's say you work for a big company, Dave, as your full-time job, and you have an email list and you can push out the link to 2,000 people and say, vote for me, and you're well-liked in your organization, and you get 2,000 people to go on there and vote, 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 vote. Like, the recognition then is, are you popular? Do you have the means to get a bunch of votes? Or would you rather be recognized from like industry professionals that, that are trying to be holistic in their approach, that are trying to be objective in their approach and put it on quality? I think it gains a little bit more weight in the value of the award itself, in knowing that it isn't that way. Because every year, like clockwork, when the voting process starts, we get some people that say this should be 100% fan vote. And then we get people who say, I know someone who's trying to do bot voting, or they're encouraging, try to do multiple, they figured out some cheat to the system or something like that. And that's not what the fan vote process is meant to be, right? The fan vote process is meant to be another means for you to gain support. So if I get nominated, I can share it on my social media. I can get more eyes on it, maybe some extra venues see me, maybe my fans, or, I get congratulation messages, and it broadens your reach. You get more likes. It's a means to kind of work towards the hype machine, I guess, for each artist to maybe get some additional attention towards themselves. So yeah, it's an endless debate back and forth, but I've seen more evidence of the negative aspect of the fan voting than I have the positive fan voting. So to answer your question, it certainly comes into play. It does a percentage, and the committee is able to see fan votes. It's an internet online link. We never ever thought about publishing those to show.
Or just like sharing, this was fan favorite. Even if they don't win, be like, this was fan favorite,
Yeah, I mean, I have no
choice.
problem because we have purview to it. I've never announced this on a podcast or anywhere before, but last year there was one act that had over 11,000 votes.
That's incredible.
So the next act in second place. Now you mentioned what it was, 326 or whatever you did the math.
Yeah.
Right. So like, let's say last year there was 250 acts. Right. This one act had 11,000 votes, and they were all legit. Nothing shady there. The next act who had the most popular or the highest number of votes was probably about 1,400. So it shows you the disparity in how popular that act was compared to everyone else.
Yeah.
There are some acts that I wouldn't doubt if they have 17 votes. Right?
Yeah.
And in some cases, when I look at that and I know what that person or that band did, it's easy to say like, okay, and then look at their social media and go, they didn't even share that they were nominated. They didn't even share to go vote for me. And so did, and they had 1,000 votes. Do you use that as a metric to consider for award winning content over the year? Did they lobby for votes or did they didn't lobby for votes? That's kind of why we have it solely make up as a percentage, and then also have the informed vote, so to speak, which is also tried to diversify and all that. So, but again, same thing. I'll say it multiple times on the podcast. If there are additional ideas out there, or always open. Is there a better way to do this? Maybe throw it up there for debate. Look forward to the comments section too.
Yeah.
Is what can be tweaked,
Yeah, I would say, just
what are your thoughts, man?
Well, just my thought in general would be not even so much releasing the numbers, but having the information of who the fan favorite was, no matter who it is. You know what I mean? Even if they don't win.
In each category?
I would say, yeah, each category I'd be like, okay, this is the winner, and maybe they'll be the fan favorite too, but announcing who the fan favorite is in each one, because here's what I could tell you is that I know people that have 100,000 followers on Facebook that paid for those 100,000 followers that would not get, they get 20 to 30 likes on a post. They're not going to get those people to vote. You know what I mean? So it's not, I think that you can, and if somebody buys votes, the public may not see it. You guys probably will get through it with your other criteria, but us musicians will be like, oh, fan favorite? No, we saw, hold on. How did you get 80,000 votes? You can't get 5 people to your show. Like we would know.
You know what I mean? That's the question though. Does it encourage more debate? Like I think the initial way you phrase the question is, does it help or hurt? If that was it, right. So I guess that would be the case. Like, what if that comes up there? Does that encourage too much negativity in debate that kind of goes against the mission statement?
Sure.
Or I don't know. I mean, it's because certainly
I think it would be.
And the other question I throw it back to you is, when do you announce that? Right? Do you say, here's who won the fan favorite vote in the blues rock category now, weeks before the award ceremony, and then do they feel like they have a leg up coming into it? Do you announce it simultaneous with it, and then it takes more time and effort on stage and it has the ceremony elongate? Do you announce it afterwards, where it's almost like a consolation prize if you did or did not win? And how do all of it come together as far as what percentage of fan favorites also equal the CPMA award winner as far as math-wise goes?
That's a great point, and I would definitely do it after. If it was me personally, I would be like, all right, now that the ceremony's over, here's a list of fan favorites. You know what I mean? Like, this is the people who got out there, they hit the ground, they marketed themselves, they asked for votes, they shared the mission, you know what I mean? Like, make it into something like that rather than, well, the fan favorite doesn't actually matter. And it's not so much that it doesn't, but it's not the end all be all. And in a lot of cases, you're absolutely right. Just because you can get a bunch of people to vote for you doesn't mean that you met all the criteria that qualify you to be in that conversation. So I think that, providing the fan favorite vote would satisfy the people that aren't musicians in knowing that their voice was heard. I think that's just me personally.
No, that's fair. I mean, I agree with that, unless it speaks more to what you said, which is the scenario of fan favorite. Really,
right?
They either have 0 followers or they didn't promote it, but yet they got it. It would beg a couple questions.
Sure. I think it's worth exploring. And that's just me, and that's from the perspective of all my friends that aren't musicians that vote. And then they'll vote, and then they'll, like, my one friend messaged me and he's like, I voted not like it matters. And I'm like, well, I don't want people to feel that way. So I'm like,
that's how some people feel on election day,
Oh, my God. Right. Yeah. That's a great point. All right. So, let me see. I got another question for you here. So is there now I'm just going to give a specific example. I hope this doesn't come across as bitter. This is just an example of mine. In 2021, I was nominated for solo musician or something like that. Male solo artist, I think it was. And since then, you've broken down the categories into subcategories, which I think is very, very cool, because the people that I was in with that were original musicians, they didn't do cover game. They like the cover musician game. So in the same way, so it was kind of like we were in different categories. And the guy that won the category that I was in, now that year, I'll just lay this out. So that year I had grown my online following by almost 2,000 followers in a year. I had released 3 singles. I had performed right around 200 shows that year, like live performances. And whenever the award was given out, it was given out to Antonio Andrade. And I love Antonio since then. I've learned who Antonio is. I didn't know who he was at the time, but I know who he is now. And whenever I looked at his performance schedule for that year, he had a quarter of the performances that I had. And I looked at the music that he had released, and it wasn't that year. He had released a ton of albums in the past, but there wasn't really much releases that happened that year. He didn't drop a new album. So it was like there was a certain amount of criteria that I just kind of looked at it and went, what is the criteria that the judges look at if it's not, because I thought that those were all metrics that were being judged. And then whenever I got there that day and I was just like, okay, I mean, I've played more shows than everybody in this entire category combined. So I had all of these thoughts in my head. And at the time, it made me feel deflated because I felt like I didn't know what the formula was to actually be able to win an award. So do you have any, is there a set criteria that the acts or that the judges look at whenever they are judging a nominee for the year?
Yeah, I think we kind of went over that already, right? Which is number one, quality always dominates, then it goes into the number of shows and all that kind of stuff. And, it sounds like you're kind of spitting some of that back, which makes perfect sense, right? Which is then, how does someone escalate higher than someone else? I was trying to look it up here because I'm fairly certain I think he released a full-length album that year that he did one, but I wasn't able to pull it up in time here. Either way, but in that specific example, I think it makes sense to dig a little bit because it's personal to you. So
I mean,
number one, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
And number two, I always say anytime there's any element of controversy or why this or why that, I think it's very important. At least in this instance, because it sounds like you're asking because you care, right?
I definitely do. Yeah, 100%.
Right, which is what I mean, right?
Yeah,
I mean, and that's why I say it. I always use that as a qualifier. Like even if someone reaches out via email or in the Facebook comments or something, it goes, what the heck is this? Or even if it's met with controversy, or even if there's expletives in it, or whatever it is, right? It's because they're at a point in emotion wise that they care. This matters to them, which I think is ultimately the focus, right? Is people, I don't want to generalize, but musicians out there, like I said, they either kind of do it for creativity or they want to do it for sharing. Like me, myself, if I create content in a band or something, it's like so hard to sit on something, right? It's like, get it out, man. Allow people to listen to it as soon as possible because you want people to hear what you've done. And that's kind of how I feel is, even feedback wise, right? Like some sort of recognition, some sort of feedback. Hey, I listened to your song. It's great. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of dovetailing off of that, but as far as it comes down to, something like that metric, I don't know. I could look in there too, as far as, where the fan votes go, where all the votes kind of go. But, ultimately when it comes down to it, I would say number one comes down to quality and preference of each person in terms of genre. And like, again, I'd have to clarify, but I'm fairly certain that he released a full length album that year.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct in that. I was incorrect. Yeah, he released, let's see here, in May 8th of 2020, he released Lucky in Love, which was a 11 track
right.
original album.
And I think if my memory serves me correctly, I think he was in the finals in some singer-songwriter competition that year as well.
I gotcha.
Which was kind of one of the things up there. So I don't know. There's so many factors that come into play.
Sure. So here's what I would say is because I'm that did sound very bitter, and I did not mean it to sound bitter at all.
I mean, you qualified it.
Yeah. So what I would say is that's the reason why I think it's so important to have the correct categories, because like where he killed it as a solo artist, releasing an album and being in a singer-songwriter showcase and all that, while I was over playing, multiple hundreds of shows and growing my social following. So it was like we were in different worlds.
And that's tough, man. It's I totally agree with that. But heck, I mean, in some cases, there's genre bending acts out there as well. As we put them in rock band, but they could fit in 4 different categories. Stuff like that. So it's very tough sometimes delineating that. And I almost don't like pigeonholing acts in certain genres. But at the same time, how else are you going to give out awards or recognize people? But there are some people that could fit in 5 to 10 genres, to be honest, because there's elements of everything in there.
Right.
So yeah, I think more categories tries to help fine tune that down. And then there's also, things that we've done with some of the spot awards as well, which is maybe something is so, niche that it doesn't have a category. Like last year, I think we gave something away for like best ska band, right? It's not like there's like 20 ska bands in the area.
Yeah.
There's not even 5 or 3 to make a category with different nominees, but they had a great year and they're deserving of some recognition. But you can't throw them in to best alt rock category and expect them to be at parity with everyone else. So more categories equals hopefully more accuracy in that respect. But ultimately, if it encourages debate, like in your situation, that's kind of the same thing. I mean, heck, they just announced NFL awards and MVP, right? Josh Allen won over Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson had better numbers than he did when he won the MVP. So, and then there's people going, well, how does that work? How does this work? What do they take into consideration? And it's either way, it brings eyes, it brings thought to it, and it brings more attention to it overall. That hopefully, we hope that year that people said, I know Dave Gates, he's deserving, or maybe I'm not familiar with Dave Gates, let me look more into him. And the same thing with Antonio Andrade.
Yeah. I took that away from that. What it helped me with was I didn't know who Antonio was at all. And just what happened that year made me dive deep into who he is. And I'm like, oh, his music is incredible. Like, this guy's so good. And I don't think I ever would have actively seeked out his music. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, he's from Centralia, that area that's been on fire for decades or whatever. And, he might play at some venues that people haven't been to either. So it's always, it's always fun. Even that, I don't even remember who else was in the category, but you could do the same with everybody in the category for sure.
Sure. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad that I got a chance to bring that up, mostly because it's because these people, especially the people that are like naysayers of this kind of organization, is they're looking at what are the hard criteria. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And I think that we've outlined a
sure.
lot of
I mean,
that today.
everybody wants to be recognized. Yeah, everybody wants to be recognized. We're ultimately trying to do the best foot forward. But I think it kind of comes back to what we've touched on several times here is this organization is about the kids. And
Right.
last year at the award ceremony, when we were able to play the Baba O'Reilly video, and there's nothing sad about it, but there were literally people in tears in the audience just seeing, look at these kids, like, number one,
So good.
excelling, being so talented.
Yeah.
Like, the future is bright, right? And all in all, we are an award show, but it's much bigger than that. And when you take a step back, or a 50,000-foot view, and you see, that ladder thing that we started it with, which again is the kids, to have them be a part of the scene when it comes to the awards, and eventually say, hey, look, there's somebody like August Burns Red, who are inducted this year, who made it in the metalcore genre. I can do that too. There's a path here. I don't have my charger with me here in the hotel, but I have 4% battery remaining,
Oh,
so it may cut out on my side as well.
perfect. All right. Well, we'll make it really quick.
Sounds good.
So just the last question I have for you, and thank you one more time. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for coming on the podcast and having this conversation. I was very surprised to get nominated this year after some of the critical things I've said about the organization in the past, and But I think overall, and I think I've qualified this a million times, overall, I think the organization is doing very, very good things. And I also think that it's a young organization that's growing. And I think that it's not a malicious organization. I think you guys are doing really big things. So thank you for
Thanks,
being
man. Yeah.
here.
Yeah, I don't think anybody could speak for or out in the organization and have that be an influence of a nomination or a win. That kind of takes the impartiality out of it, which is ultimately the goal. So, good on you for having a good year, man. And each and every nomination is well deserved for sure. And same goes, for your solo work as well as the podcast, man. You're doing big things, and keep up the good work.
I appreciate that, man. So where do you see the CPMAs in 10 years? Last question for you.
Man, yeah, 10 years, right? Be 16 years in. The organization will be able to drive a car at that point. So, yeah. That'll be wild, man. I mean, there's so many acts on the consideration list now for future induction. So I know we'll still have, a slew of very well-respected acts to come into the Hall of Fame who have done great things in the past. But what I'm really most looking forward to 10 years down the line is to see the progression of the scene, to have acts who have won CPMAs make it from this area and kind of have some sort of a homecoming, so to speak, to come back, right, to come back and get inducted into the Hall of Fame after winning CPMAs. And or to say it differently, to see the youth artists grow up through the scene and establish their own careers, or maybe even make it on a national level, as well as to just see that that ladder from beginning to end kind of materialize itself on the scene. So how cool would it be, like Addie Grace or Alex Warner or Faith Noel or Jillian Smith, or somebody who's been through the youth music showcases and those experiences, to make it on a broad scale and be recognized years later for the growth that they've seen in their career. It's be a magical moment. You think about it in respect of, if we would have had this organization around in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, it would be like having a teenage Lizzie Hale and RJ Hale, being involved in the local music scene, getting local awards, and then they make it big, and then they come back as an already member of the Central Pennsylvania music family.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be awesome.
That would be incredible. Yeah, that sounds like a great long-term goal too. Is just to see the progression, just to see what happens, and be able to celebrate the wins of those, of the people that are coming through the scene right now.
Agreed.
So yeah,
Agreed.
That's awesome, man. Well, thanks again. I know you're super busy setting up for the awards. Can you tell everybody about how to find out more about the Central Pennsylvania Music Hall of Fame, the awards, the ceremony, everything? Just let everybody know how they can find all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. The website is the acronym for Central Pennsylvania Music Hall of Fame, which is cpmhof.com. And you can check out the website for all information. The award ceremony, again, is Wednesday, March 5th at the American Music Theater in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Doors open at 5. The pre-show starts at 5:30, mixed with the red carpet experience. We got all kinds of photo backdrops, everybody dressing to the nines and mingling out in the lobby. And ceremony starts at 7. And heck, man, there's actually an after party too at the world-renowned Lancaster location of the Village, which has actually just reopened. So check out the website, and we hope to see every member of the local music community, not only at the ceremony, but also at the after party. And look forward to seeing a lot of the public there to learn about some of the artists in our areas and become fans as well.
Man, that's huge. All right. I love it. Dude, thank you so much for being on the show today and taking some time out of your schedule to let everybody know what the Central Pennsylvania Music Hall of Fame is all about. So wish you good luck this year. I'll see you at the awards.
We'll see you there. Thanks so much, Dave.
All right, man. Thanks. Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you for tuning in today. Your support keeps the music flowing. Every note and what I play means the world just to hear you know it. We'll see you next time. Don't stray by. Your love is our shining star.